So John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum, is directed by Chad Stahelski and once again features Keanu Reeves as John Wick, as well as featuring Ian McShane, Lawrence Fishburne, Asia Kate Dillon, Mark Dacascos, Holly Berry, Angelica Houston. And this time around, following the events of John Wick Chapter 2, John Wick has now become excommunicado, meaning that he'll be hunted by everyone of the High Table. And basically now John Wick has to try to fight off all these people that are coming after him because he has a huge bounty on his head. So, John Wick Chapter 3 was actually the first John Wick movie that I actually saw in theaters. I did not see John Wick 1 or 2 in theaters when they came out, actually. It wasn't until this movie that I'm like, okay, maybe I should start seeing these movies. And I'm glad I did see it in the theaters, and I'm glad that I eventually rewatched this movie again multiple times. And I, like the other two John Wick movies, I enjoy this movie with each new viewing. So, what works in this movie? Once again, the acting is pretty good, particularly from Keanu Reeves. This may be one of his best roles. I do think he's really good in this movie. Lawrence Fishburne, I kind of like seeing a lot more of him in this movie. He only had a bit role in John Wick 2, and I kind of like seeing him a little bit more in this one. Asia Kate Dillon in this movie is very intimidating. I think they're the most intimidating villain in all these John Wick movies. Like, the villain from John Wick 2 wasn't really that great, but John Wick 1 had a pretty fun villain. Asia Kate Dillon played a villain that I would not want to deal with at all. Mark Dacascos was also pretty good in this movie. I thought he kind of brought a lot of humor to his performance as well. Lance Reddick was also really good. Ian McShane was really good in this movie too. The fight scenes, they're just incredible. The first one, the library, amazing. Like, he just kills him with a book. That is just incredible. It was well staged. It was really well done. The antique shop when the guys are just throwing the knives at John Wick, I thought that was really good. The scene where John Wick's on a horse, but these other guys are on a motorcycle, and John Wick takes them all on. Another one involving motorcycles, but all these guys have swords. That was also really great. The final fight at the Continental, that was incredible. A lot of these fights are just great. I do think the action sequences do get better with each new movie, and I hope that John Wick 4 has some of the best action sequences yet. Also, there are a lot of really fun moments. There are some really fun kills in this movie, particularly in this one scene with Halle Berry. Keanu Reeves and Halle Berry take on this one villain, and they use her dogs in this movie. That was kind of funny. There were a lot of moments that were surprisingly really funny, like Lawrence Fishburne and Mark Dacascos provide some of the humor for this movie. I do think they're really good. But again, a lot of the editing is great. How they edit these sequences is also really good. You can definitely see where the shots land, where you can definitely feel how they feel. It's really well done. The fight choreography is just incredible. I was impressed by it. The fight, pretty much everything about the production values kind of do get better with each new movie as well. Never really thought of it that way. The cinematography is also really great. The score is really good as well. I also really do like the cliffhanger ending of this movie, where it's like, the end of John Wick Chapter 2 is obviously a cliffhanger to this movie, where it's like, you'll have 1 hour to escape, John. So now go off, run, do whatever you can before we unleash this whole thing on you. And John Wick Chapter 3 also has an interesting cliffhanger where they're about to, take on the High Table following the events of this movie. That I do think is really interesting, and I wonder how that's going to play out in John Wick 2, and John Wick 4, I mean. And also, kind of something I've been talking about with all these John Wick movies is how they portray the 5 stages of grief. Bargaining I do think this actually does fit bargaining pretty much. I do think that is very interesting. You kind of feel like, you kind of know that John Wick's talking to like a lot of these people about trying to make up for some of the things that he's done, trying to move forward, trying to get out of his situation. And I do think the whole idea that this franchise is basically the 5 stages of grief, I do think that is very interesting. And I wonder how, again, I wonder how John Wick 4 will portray that, if they will actually talk about depression. I do think that would be pretty interesting to see. So, was there anything about this movie that I don't like? Well, I think even though Halle Berry and Angelica Houston are great actresses, they weren't so great in this movie. Angelica Houston, I felt like her character was just a little too over the top. Especially with her accent, it just kind of didn't work for me. Halle Berry is not really used in the movie as much as I would have liked to have seen her in this movie. She does have a few good moments with John Wick. She does have a few good moments, like a few, one-liners with John Wick. But I just felt like it wasn't enough. I feel like we should have gotten a little bit more of her. Also, I kind of didn't like that how, even though the action sequences are incredible, I don't really like how in this movie they kind of use gunplay a lot versus over the stunts in this movie and the actual fighting. I just kind of felt like it was kind of lazy just to use guns over and over again. Yeah, I know John Wick 1 and 2 use guns pretty frequently, but I don't know, I just felt like with this movie, it definitely relied more on the guns. Like, I remember from the trailers, like, I'm gonna need guns, lots of guns. Yeah, clearly you do. And I feel like I would have preferred it if it was like a mixture of just stunts and guns rather than like half stunts, half guns. And also, I don't know if I like this or hate this, but like I feel like it wasn't really set up well. This movie kind of sets up a spin-off movie about the ballet dancer in this movie. I felt like it wasn't really effective. It was just kind of a random thing that they were trying to tease, but it wasn't really teased well. It was just kind of it was just kind of a moment where it's like, okay, there's a ballet dancer in the background, and I guess she's gonna have a movie about her that John Wick will appear in. Okay, they changed out the actress for that too. It's gonna be Ana de Armas. So, what was really the point? Just to tease it? It's just kind of a throwaway thing in this movie that overall is still really fun to watch and very, very exciting to watch. Overall, John Wick Chapter 3, this franchise, in my opinion, it kind of just gets better and better with each new movie. The acting is really good. The fight scenes are just incredible. And it doesn't really lose itself. It can be funny, but it's not overly funny. It's just the right amount of funny. The editing's great, the cinematography is great, the choreography is great, the score is great, and I love how this franchise is gonna, move forward with the next movie. Even though I kind of didn't like some of the actors in this movie, particularly Angelica Houston, Halle Berry, and I kind of wish they kind of like blended the whole, let's use stunts versus let's use guns fighting. I think this movie is still great. I'll give John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum 3.5 out of 4 stars. See it. So, how would you rank the John Wick movies so far? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.